When I look at the heavens, when I look at the heavens, when I look at the heavens,
when I look at the heavens, the moon and stars, I shout your name, I praise your name, oh God. When I look at the oceans, the beasts of the sea, I shout your name, I praise your name, oh Lord my God.
Welcome to Come and Relax with HeCoin, sponsored by Health Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online educational institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean and beyond. Come and Relax with HeCoin is an interview and discussion segment which focuses on topical issues which may be controversial on health, aggression in proximity relationships, theology, business, politics, music, tourism and hospitality, or issues which are relevant to you or listening audience. This program is aired this and every Thursday at this time on this station and comes to you on several international media houses in the world through various platforms on website, YouTube, and Facebook. I'll be your host, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica, President and CEO of this 33-year-old institution. HeCoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go.
I shout your name, I praise your name, oh God. When I look at the mountains, the sky and sea, I shout your name, I praise your name.
oh Lord my God, you made humanity
A little less than your divinity.
Oh Lord my God, we marvel, you are great. You crown us with your glory and your love.
I have found Come and Relax with HeCoin to be interesting and an insightful program. Wherever I am, I can't afford to miss the speakers and what they have to offer. When is the next program again?
Greetings and welcome to Come and Relax with HeCoin. I'm your host, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica. Let me thank the following media houses for airing Come and Relax with HeCoin: RCP Internet Radio and TV, YouTube and Facebook, UFDV Gospel and DCM Internet Radio and Television. Our listening audience has been climbing every week. Thanks to you, we cherish your presence and hope that you will continue and remain with us until death us do part. Continue sharing this link with others. Call your friends and relatives. This program is for all ages. The faster this information gets out, the more lives will be changed and saved. Yes, you heard me right. If you are on this platform, which is RCP website, to watch on TV, then click channel 1 and unmute. Remember to unmute. Please remember to adjust your clocks as daylight saving time, DST, ends on Sunday, October 30. Some countries do not participate in this, and if so, you would need to make no changes to your clocks. We are still in the hurricane season, June 1 to November 30, so don't let your guards down, especially those of us in the Caribbean. A hurricane tip is in the queue for you. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
I am Latoya White, a proud past student of the Noble Institution, HeCoin. I was in the February to August 2021 graduating batch. The course consisted of many aspects of healthcare, but my favorites were the body system. This helped me to know more about my body and to be more in tune with myself. The nursing trailblazers. These women made their wonderful contributions to nursing up to this very day. The certified nursing assistant skills. These techniques helped tremendously on my practical journey, the do's and don'ts of everything. It was very rewarding and exciting to be a part of this nursing journey and to have learned so much along the way. The help and support from both the lecturer and the president, Mr. Jarrett, was next to none. I did my nursing practical for 1 week at Bingham's Nursing Home in Linstead. The bond I had and created with the patients and the staff and the laughs were very memorable, and I will keep those very close to my heart always. On my theory, I received a credit, and on my practical, I got a distinction. Attending Equine was one of the best decisions for my life that I could have made. They have the right tools to push you to become a better version of yourself. Equine, reaching people where they are, leading them where they should go.
Royal Central Praise RCP Internet Radio and TV in Basseterre, St. Kitts and Nevis presents a timely hurricane season preparedness tip, June 1 to November 30. Store extra food, especially things that can be eaten without cooking or which need very little preparation. Electricity may be off during a hurricane, leaving you without refrigeration. This is a timely hurricane season preparedness tip for you, sponsored by Hecoin, the premier online polytechnic of the Caribbean. Visit its website at www.hecoinglobal.com. Disasters don't wait. Make your plan today. Domestic violence is associated with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and substance abuse in the general population. Exposure to domestic violence has a significant impact on children's mental health. Many studies have shown and found strong links between poor educational outcomes and higher levels of mental health problems. Persons experiencing mental health difficulties may seek or become dependent on others who may offer them emotional or practical support. The caregiver may use this relationship trust and dependence to abuse or exploit the individual. Is there a public health emergency in mental health and domestic violence now emanating in Jamaica and maybe the world? Domestic violence and mental health, are they linked in any way? Join our qualified and experienced guests in the field of domestic violence and mental health on Come and Relax with Hecoin, the voice of Health Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online educational institution in the world, as we look at this very important topic as the world focuses on the issues of mental health and domestic violence in October of each year. Maureen Williams, registered nurse and executive director, Jamaica Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Raquel Bailey, director at Jamaica Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Domestic Violence Survivor, and Janelle N. Robinson, associate clinical psychologist and research consultant, Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, with host, media and marketing consultant, theologian, international chaplain, and professor of media studies for over 30 years, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica. The date to remember, Thursday, October 27, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in Jamaica, 8:30 p.m. in other parts of the world on several media platforms to include RCP Internet Radio and TV, UFDV Gospel, and all platforms of DCM International Radio and TV. Hecoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go. Welcome back to Come and Relax with Hecoin. New research from the UK finds that experience of domestic violence is more common among adults with all kinds of mental health disorders than in the general population. The researchers from King's College, London's Institute of Psychiatry, and the University of Bristol say their findings suggest doctors should be aware of the link and ensure patients with mental health problems are kept safe from domestic violence and treated from the mental health effects of such abuse. A professor at King's Institute of Psychiatry, Louise Howard, says in a statement that the study finds both men and women with mental health problems are also the ones at increased risk for domestic violence, meaning that the evidence suggests that there are two things happening. Domestic violence can often lead to victims developing mental health problems, and people with mental health problems are more likely to experience domestic violence. Mental health professionals need to be aware of the link between domestic violence and mental health problems and ensure that their patients are safe from domestic violence and are treated for the mental health impact of such abuse. So from all of what we have just said, we can safely say that mental health affects how we think, feel, and act. And domestic violence is a behavior pattern in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. However, our experts are here to provide as many answers to our questions within our 40 544-minute program at this moment. Domestic abuse and mental health problems, are they linked in any way to behavioral issues now being experienced worldwide? Come and Relax with eCoin today welcomes our guests, already comfortably seated in our boardroom. Moyin Williams, registered nurse and executive director, Jamaica Coalition Against Domestic Violence, JCADV. Raquel Bailey, deputy director at JCADV and domestic violence survivor. And Janelle N. Robinson, associate clinical psychologist and research consultant, Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network. Welcome, ladies, to Come and Relax with eCoin. Moyin is already a registered member of the family, so she needs no introduction, but anyway, she's there. And we welcome the other two ladies with us. Welcome. Am I seeing all three? One is missing. Studio, can you bring in that one person? Let's hope she will be here shortly. All right, welcome, ladies. Let's now look at this whole matter of domestic violence. So we have Moyin and Raquel, is that? Okay, yes. All three are in now. Perfect. Perfect. I don't know where one was, but that's how it is sometimes with media and touching a button which goes wrong. No, Moyin, I want to begin with you since you have already been baptized in eCoin. You have already been with us. So I want to begin with you. I want you to define, although I did it in my context as a chaplain, but I want you to define for us domestic violence, sometimes called domestic abuse, family abuse, and intimate abuse. Define that for us. Unmute, please.
So domestic violence is any violence committed by individuals living in the same domestic circle. So it's a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that one household member, it's used to maintain power over the other household member. It can be intimate partner violence, sibling violence, child abuse. It can happen between your elderly parents. It can happen between any family member that's living with you.
Okay. And Raquel, take the other side for me. Domestic abuse. What is true domestic abuse?
I should say thanks for having me on your program, Professor.
You are a newcomer. You are a newcomer, yes. So you have to say thanks. More you know all time. Very well. Very well. Okay. Accepted.
So true domestic violence. The word true means pure. It means with intent when it comes from a mental standpoint. The person is fully aware of the violence that they are committing to one. So again, as you stated earlier on, it's to gain power and control over someone. It's to ensure that they are depending on you entirely to say what they should. And that's the definition of, I would say, true violence, because it is coming from a place where it's intended.
Powerful. And I'm glad you use the word true, as I have, because domestic violence on its own, without putting in that true, can not give the proper definition that I would want to lay the foundation. Janelle, you are more into mental health, although you can't avoid domestic violence. But I want you to define, I did it already, but in your own words, what is mental health?
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Professor. And you defined it lovely. And just to reiterate, so mental health is something that everybody has, right? It's how we feel, it's how we think, it's how we connect, and it's how we behave in the world. And we often use the analogy with physical health. When we think about physical health, we usually think of physical health on a spectrum. On one end, you have someone that's in good health. On the other end, you may have someone that's physically ill. Similarly, when you think of mental health, on one end, you may have someone that's mentally well, mentally healthy, and then on the other end, you may have someone experiencing challenges that causes distress or some level of functional impairment. So I like to use that analogy because physical health is layman's term, it's the household term. Mental health similarly is something that everyone has, and it helps us to navigate in the world.
Great, great, great. Moin, talk to us about 4 types of violence. On mute, please. Still not hearing you.
There are many different types of forms of domestic violence. So physical, verbal, sexual, emotional or psychological forms of violence, economic, which is using money to control persons, digital or technological, are also forms of violence, but it's anything that is used to intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, terrorize, threaten someone, is considered domestic violence.
You want to pick out one of them for us and just talk on it?
Well, money is one of them that people usually talk about.
I was hoping that as a woman you wouldn't touch that, but that's fine. We understand. Go ahead, my dear buddy.
But there are a lot of research studies that show that 99% of cases of domestic violence is rooted in money. Somebody owing, another family member money or property. It's always involves something of that sort why people would, resort to violence. And it can be deadly. People kill people over land and all sorts of things.
Oh yes. So when it comes on to the land issue, you and I know, and the others, what is happening with land in Jamaica right now at a time like this. But we won't touch that.
Yes.
Now, Raquel, what are 4 most common causes of violence?
So one of the 4 most common causes of violence, and I would more specific with domestic violence, is one, there is history in the family where abuse is present. Most times they say hurt people hurt people. That's a true statement where we can say a history of abuse most times tend to affect one's ability to process whether it is an healthy space or not. And so they think that it's okay growing up as a child, seeing this kind of abuse in the home. And the second, as Moen said earlier on, the financial aspect. There's also the factor at play where independence, when it comes to financial well-being, stability, plays a very key role in domestic violence, especially, and I would say more so in interpartner relationship violence. Again, we cannot leave out mental health because someone who thinks that it's okay to control someone's ability to move, to spend, to navigate their own lives is of the notion that, yes, this is okay. So mentally, that plays a key role in having a good mental health when it comes to knowing that that's not the way to go. And last but not least, I would say just the pure desire to control.
Very important. Very important. The 4, I love those 4, especially the last one. Now, Janelle, can we prevent mental health problems? Are there cures for mental health problems? I know you're not a medical doctor, but you can speak on it. Can people with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, be abusive? I only asking one, but
no worries.
I know I can answer.
And I'm just gonna use language, right? So language is very important. So remember, mental health is something that everybody has. Mental health disorders, mental health illness is on the other spectrum that I spoke about earlier. So there's no blueprint to prevent mental health issues, mental health disorders. And the reason why is that there are several factors that can increase one's risk of developing a mental health problem. And some of these factors you cannot control. So you can't prevent what you can't control. So prevention is complex. So what we like to say and how we term it is, how do you reduce the risk of developing a mental health illness or disorder? And that's through several life choices, which we can get into. So it's really, yes, mental health disorders and illnesses can be, your risk of developing can be reduced, but there is no blueprint to prevent that. And similarly, in terms of cures for mental health problems, you have dozens upon dozens of mental health disorders. That's my specialty, and I'm sure, Prof, you already know already, right? So when we talk about cures, that's also very complex. However, there are treatments for different types of mental health disorders and different types of symptoms. So treatments that people know about, you know about therapy, you know about medication, we know about the lifestyle changes. Those are things that can treat mental health illness and disorder. And I just want to emphasize that if you have a mental health illness or a disorder, you can still live well, right? You can manage those symptoms and you can reduce them to a point of non-existence, or how we refer to it within the field is at a state of remission. And then real quickly, as it relates to people living with post-traumatic stress disorder, if they can be abusive. Quick answer to that is yes, they can be abusive. However, as a researcher myself, the research shows that most people with post-traumatic stress disorder do not engage in violence. So it's important for us to disentangle that notion as well. And just finally, just to add, not everyone exposed to violence, including domestic violence, will develop the disorder. They may have post-traumatic stress symptoms, but it may not rise to the level of a disorder.
Great. You did it well in the time that I gave you. Excellent. I mean, you have put things together. And, the phobia of calling people mad and expecting that, they'll just be living like that. That is something that I'm glad you spoke about. Moin, and this is a powerful question for you. But being a registered nurse, I know you have the combination to answer. Why do victims sometimes return to or stay with abusers?
Okay, so breaking free from abuse is not as simple as just walking through the door. It's not easy. And that's why we encourage people to be supportive and non judgmental. There are emotional factors at play, there are also physical factors at play. Believing that the abusive partner will change, people have hope. People fear the abuser, they fear the threats, they believe they will act on those threats. And sometimes it's not towards the victim, but towards the victim family members. So they feel, entitled to stay. Lack of emotional support, feeling guilty over a failed marriage, especially if you were warned that person's not good for you. Feeling responsible for the abuse, fear of making major life changes, attachment to the partner, feeling helpless, hopeless, trapped, believe that he or she, can help the abuser, through their problems. And of course, there are physical reasons. We discussed them earlier, like economic dependence on the abuser, fear of physical harm, again, not just to family members, but to properties, to your pets. Fear of emotional damage to the children or the loss of that parent, having to take your kids out of very good schools, or lack of information on domestic violence resources that are available. And I'm glad we have Janelle here because she did some strong work in putting together resources across Jamaica for mental health issue. But just knowing that there are other places, domestic violence agency, that work with victims and survivors. A lot of people don't know about them. And that is why Jamaica Coalition is very determined about, bringing people and connecting people with resources. So there are a lot of issues why people choose to stay.
And you brought up a lot, including the agencies. And that is very good. And you included Janelle in it. Raquel, do abusers show any potential warning signs? How can that be observed? We know we'll hear from you later on in a deeper way, but just on the surface, do abusers show any potential warning? How can they be observed?
Okay, so in most cases, abusers do show signs. The issue, however, is victims sometimes do not recognize those signs, and so How does one observe something when they do not know what it is? How is it that you know, okay, somebody telling me that, okay, when you get paid, give me your money, I will spend it. How do you know that this is financial abuse? To some of us, it is a normal way of living. And so some of those signs have been ignored for years, and they have just been brought to the forefront on the media, in books, on
Right
other
here,
platforms,
right? This
right here,
platform.
to say this is now a thing to look at. This is a sign to observe. And so sometimes we tend to not be able to see it. But I would just give a few tips on some of the things that we would say everyday abusers tend to pose as signs when it comes to just the deceitful behavior towards your partner, towards your family member, the manipulation. Most of the time, they do feel insecure within themselves, and so they pass that on to others to say, "You are no good because this is how I feel. I feel like I'm no good, and therefore you're no good either." It's the jealousness, it's the possessiveness in one personality. Some of the times they display anger outbursts in public, in private, at home, just having basic conversations. This person would just tick off and get so upset and would call you names. So these are some of the common key factors that people should be aware of and should observe day to day.
Very good. What causes mental health problems, Janelle? What does one do if he or she is worried about his or her health?
Right. So there are several factors, as I mentioned earlier. So one of the factors that we talk about is biological factors, right? That's a risk factor. That's where we talk about chemical imbalances, birth complications. Another factor is cognitively related. And that's where we can talk about brain injury, traumatic brain injury. And then we talk about life, right? Sociocultural factors related to that. So domestic abuse, community violence, pressures to succeed in life. Those are factors that can increase your risk of developing a mental health disorder or mental health illness. If you are worried about that, seek help. Seek help from a professional, not TikTok, not Instagram. From a professional, surround yourself with supportive people, people that lift you up, and don't delay. Because the longer you wait, the more difficult it will be for you to recover. Think about it. When you have a cold and a flu, the first thing we do, we get a Panadol or a Tylenol. If you're not mentally well, get help. Don't delay.
Very often, though, we delay the mental health.
We
We're quicker
do.
to deal with the flu and common colds and symptoms and so on. But when it comes down to mental health, no, do me. And then the parents say, no, do me. I saw me did tan when me I grew up. I saw me tan, so it's hereditary, making tan. Right. So I'm happy that's what you said. As a victim of domestic abuse, you live in constant state of alertness and anticipation, waiting for the next attack to occur. Change is on its way. Please continue to view and or listen to this meaningful discussion. Me love it. Keycoin stands tall in providing information on mental health and domestic abuse. This 33-year-old institution has been laid on a strong footing with our late founders, Reverend Dr. Harry and Dr. Clover Jarrett, being counseling psychologists. And this was a passion for them. Thank God for the legacy and that it is being continued by our esteemed late founders who are resting in peace. Today's show will be uploaded on www.royalcentralpraiselive.com. Then beside channel 2, click on the RCP past videos. And you will see this broadcast called CARWH, which means Come and Relax with Keycoin. And you will see today's date to be uploaded 30 minutes after the show ends. Please remember to click the subscribe button so that we know that you are with us. The final segment comes up in a few minutes. Grab your bottle of water. Sip till we come back. Soon come. Royal Central Praise RCP Internet Radio and TV in St. Kitts invites you to listen to Caribbean News Brief CNB on Tuesdays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Join Caribbean veteran in news production and news presentation for over 30 years, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica, for reliable and comprehensive news in the Caribbean. CNB on RCP every Tuesday and Friday at 10 in the morning. RCP, the breath of fresh air. Do you want to study in a recession-proof career online? Health Education and Counseling Institute HECOIN offers International Diploma in Patient Care Technician PCT, which is a combination of nursing assistant, phlebotomy, and electrocardiogram through the American Medical Certification Association AMCA, which is internationally accredited. Visit www.hecoinglobal.com or call our WhatsApp 876-223-7204. HECOIN, your dreams can now be your reality. Thank you for sticking and staying with us in the final segment of Come and Relax with HECOIN, speaking with Moeen Williams, Registered Nurse and Executive Director, Jamaica Coalition Against Domestic Violence, JCADV, Raquel Bailey, Director of JCADV and Domestic Violence Survivor, and Janelle N. Robinson, Associate Clinical Psychologist and Research Consultant, Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network. Today's topic in Come and Relax with HECOIN, domestic violence and domestic abuse and mental health disorders. Are they linked in any way to behavioral issues now being experienced worldwide? Thank you, ladies, for joining us again. Now for Raquel, how would you define multi-abuse trauma? And is such a discussion on this topic relevant today?
Okay, most definitely. So definition for multiple abuse trauma is when one is repeatedly traumatized, whether it's a physical or emotional, psychological, financial. A lot of times when we hear the word abuse, we always tend to think physical. And so most of the time, the emotional and psychological abuse that one goes through is far stretched more than the physical, because most times the physical is the last piece that is put to that puzzle. And so most people in today's society, as a lot of research would show, is we are emotionally abused on multiple occasions. And so by mom abuse, because verbally, oh, she tell you how your head big and then dad come, you get into a relationship and your partner tells you the same thing. That's the definition of multiple abuse that some of us truly don't comprehend. And so we just need to do discussions, of course, like this one and many more to come, because what this discussion does is it highlights and it makes people who are unaware and uneducated as it relates to domestic violence and domestic abuse become more aware. This platform, what it does is raise awareness, and it also educate people as it relates to these sort of situations.
You need to thank your boss, who is the executive director. She doesn't leave me out of any platform, you know. She called and said, "How me no hear you talk about domestic violence? It's a month for domestic violence." I said, "All right, all right, all right. All right, I have everything set for the last Saturday." So thank God for people like Moyin who keep us in the media informed that, look here, this is coming up. There needs to be a discussion. When you think of domestic abuse, think about it as a real public health concern because of the fact that domestic abuse and mental health can be deadly and cause multi abuse trauma in persons directly or indirectly affected. Guests, do you agree? Janelle, then Moeen, then Raquel.
Definitely, honors only. Definitely agree. When we usually think about domestic violence as a public health issue, many times we talk about the mental health impact. We talk about the physical health impact. Raquel mentioned that we talk about mortality rates and so forth. But as a researcher and having advocated for vulnerable groups and having insight into what policymakers want to hear, what I want to highlight is the importance for us to talk about domestic violence as it relates to the cost to society. No, domestic violence results in less persons contributing to the labor force. It results in a strain on the healthcare system, public health issue. It disrupts and tears apart family, and it reinforces a cycle of abuse. We're talking about intergenerational abuse passing on. So when we're talking about domestic violence as a public health issue, we have to talk about the economic cost because it's an issue, yes, but it's also everybody's business.
Great. Moeen.
Okay, so domestic violence is a public health emergency, and it should be declared as such. It gets limited attention though. How much of the government budget is spent towards domestic violence? A very small amount. There is not enough attention that is given to preventative work in domestic violence, which include spreading information, doing education and training. It's like people don't believe that domestic violence is worse than COVID, because when you look at it, there are a lot of lives that were lost. There are people, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, family members, kids that should be alive today that are dead because of family violence or domestic violence. And it doesn't seem to be getting the level of attention and intervention. And we're appealing to the Ministry of Health. We're appealing to the government to start prioritizing, money towards helping with domestic violence, training in community, helping to support their agencies out there that would benefit from money, so they can hire therapists, they can hire social workers, they can hire much needed people to help victims and survivors of domestic violence.
You know the issue with not many psychiatrists and psychologists. Janelle will tell you, and you know it too, island-wide, to deal with what is happening. And Professor Windell Abel said sometime in January that we not see nothing yet. This is what Professor Windell Abel said, and we are seeing some things. Look at the violence happening in our schools. That is another issue. Raquel.
Yes, as both Janelle and Moyen stated that it's generational. It is also a factor in our society, and as you stated, Professor, it's now a factor in our schools. We're seeing a rise, especially since COVID. And if we're to be honest with ourselves, we will see that rise has increased beyond expectation when it comes to abuse, not just domestically. We are seeing it in our schools, as we stated. It's in our community. We see where enough training is not being done, and enough we can advocate as much as we want, but if our government and the entities who are in charge of us as a nation does not see the emergency in this new epidemic. I would consider it not even a pandemic, because we're seeing where especially gender related violence is on its peak at this point. And so, yes, I do agree that, it's present, it's just not being taken as serious as it should be.
Good. Coping forms of abuse are the methods victims of active abuse may use to cope with their situation. Do you agree with this, Janelle? And illustrate one or two examples if you can.
Sure, I definitely agree. So, within the domestic violence situation, persons experiencing it, they're usually in a state of confusion. They're really trying to be heard and they're trying to survive. So, I want to tie in this response to what we call trauma responses, right? And when we're stressed out, we fight, we flight, we freeze, or we fawn, we people please, right? So during the DV situation, victims become angry, right? They're not just sitting there, and they may fight back in order to be heard. They may fight for their freedom. And unfortunately, this may lead to other consequences like justice involvement. That's one example, right? On the other hand, you may have individuals that in order to survive may silence themselves because of the same fear. They may become isolated. They may stop speaking to their loved ones and friends. But the thought process is that if I remain silent, if I do this, then he may treat me better. Then I will be able to get up and see another day. So those are just a few examples.
Very good. Very good. And we could have gone on and on and on. I saw that you
course.
really wanted to go on and on. Yes, yes. Now, Moyin, how can an individual situation be complicated by co-occurring issues such as disabilities, mental conditions, or psychiatric issues? These issues may or may not be a direct result of trauma, but often complicate efforts to address it. Explain this for us.
So the best way to explain it is to illustrate what multi-abuse trauma can do. For example, say we have a patient called, let's call her Merle, grew up watching her father perpetrating domestic violence against her and her mother. And then she was raped by her, her father before she was even 3 years old. The abuse continued throughout childhood. Now she's a teenager. She was gang raped. Her parents, with all kind of migration issues, that she may face because she's coming over from, let's say, hypothetically, Haiti, living here in Jamaica, the language barriers and all those things. Poverty, that's another issue for poor Merle. So now Merle has mental health issues. She's dissociating, as Daniel might explain further, is where you kind of you're absent-minded. It's like when trauma happens to you, bad things happen to you. You just, you leave your body and you go somewhere else. So she's diagnosed with this dissociative identity disorder. And she suffers from other medical complication like fibromyalgia. So she's having all this pain all over her body. And it could just be a result of the enduring trauma. So you see here, Merle has issues on top of issues. And that's where this multi-abuse trauma and complex treatment method comes into place, because you see where domestic violence it makes everything worse for Merle. So, of course, we're looking at this issue, but we're looking at it to say there are people with so many needs that are just, complicated based on their mental health issues, their past childhood trauma, and especially domestic violence thrown in the mix can be overwhelming, and difficult to treat.
Powerful. An additional layer of trauma may further aggravate the situation. Besides the stigma surrounding various kinds of trauma, an individual may face societal oppression or immigration status, or misconceptions about race or ethnicity, age, social race, disabilities, or sexual orientation. But I would want Janet to look at the first half, which is the face social oppression or immigration status. and then Raquel to look at the misconceptions about race or ethnicity, age, social class, disabilities, or sexual orientation. Janelle?
Sure, thank you. So, what Moyen was hinting at before as well, in terms of the layering and what you mentioned as well, Professor, we talk about intersectionality, right? So, you may have in one aspect, there's a factor that increases your risk, right? For example, being exposed to domestic violence or developing PTSD. Factors such as societal oppression complicates things.
Mhm.
So what it does is that it hinders people, particularly oppressed groups, from seeking help. People of color, people from the lower SCS, you can't afford it. Archaic laws, right? So for example, you still have laws within the Caribbean that allows rape within the context of marriages, right?
Mhm.
Now, these laws are not in the best interest of victims and they're woefully behind. And this is a form of systemic oppression for women, particularly. Immigration issue, that is a huge deal as well. I'm currently in the US and you have people who may be undocumented for whatever reason they're in domestic violence situations.
And they can't speak.
Exactly. They're fearful of what may happen. They may be fearful of being deported or separated from their families. So, in order to survive, what do?
Stay in it.
They stay in it, right? And those are issues that these people face. So it's not just living with your abuser, but society plays a role in terms of what actions can and cannot be taken.
Raquel?
Okay, so on the topic of misconceptions, a lot of times people tend to think that, okay, because I'm at the poorer class financially, economically, I am more exposed, or I will have a rougher life when it comes to domestic violence. Those are some of the misconceptions that we need to completely push aside, because when it comes to domestic violence, it bears no color, it bears no class, it bears no gender. It's not selective of who is a victim or fall prey to abuse. And so we need to shed more light on these misconceptions that, okay, because someone might be gay, someone might be they're poorer class, they're unmarried, they have 3 kids, that's why they're more prone to abuse or domestic violence. That's not the case. A victim of abuse, it just doesn't suit it doesn't fit in a box. And we just need to accept that that's the reality, that there's no box to put domestic violence in. It doesn't fit in a box.
We have several other questions to ask, and I know Moin will be calling me when I'm finished to say, Professor, we need another date. And I will be saying, yes, we do. And I know Raquel will be saying, oh, yes. And
Yes.
Janelle will be, why did you ask? So I think I have to put another session sometime in November because we have to hear from Raquel because she has a special testimony of where she is coming from and where she is now. Raquel, I want you to share that experience with us.
Okay, so I mean, as you stated, we need a second goal, because my journey is one which is very long. I grew up seeing domestic violence. I see the effects, the impacts on my sister, aunts, you name it. And so coming to the realization was, what is domestic violence is when I was exposed myself. I thought when I was a child it was just, arguments, relationship arguments, and coming to accepting that, oh, I am a victim of abuse, I'm a survivor of abuse, was when it was happening. The moment it was happening, the moment those blows were thrown at me, and I was I was froze. I could not believe the reason was like I didn't, there wasn't a reason. And so for me, experiencing that kind of abuse in a physical way, there was no emotional abuse because the relationship was in its baby stage. It was at the, when I said breastfeeding stage, the relationship was very young. It did not go for years. And so where signs would have been, red flags would have flown up, there was none. I just came home one day and that person just tripped and went on physically abusing me. And it went on for a good half an hour to 45 minutes. I was physically beat down to the point where I saw my life flash in front of me. And I remember in that moment, I was just thinking, God, bring me through this, because that was the only thing I could have done. And so when I got up after being beaten and I seek to get help, it was denied. So not only was I physically abused, I was denied health care. And that is something that I never experienced. Somebody in a state of need for medical attention and it was denied. That was not something that I'm used to seeing. And so that was ultimately the shocker for me, that I'm like, okay, am I going to bleed out tonight? And I didn't sleep. And so on, when I got up in the morning, I prepared myself, wiped down, wash off, whatever. And I said, I'm going to go to work. Use the makeup, cover the face. And what hit me the most was when I went to seek help from the authorities, I was further victimized. I was ridiculed because, oh, you women always come back and we call man, we lock up the man with this, with that, and you go back. And again, I was in shock because I was standing there battered and was further victimized. And so that made me become the person I am, the advocate that I am today. And I wish, there was time to share more, about the story. But, it's sad that most times victims are further victimized by the same society, the entities which were set in place to protect us and serve us. And so that's why I'm here advocating for people who are not able to speak for themselves, and hopefully change will come.
I think the way we could start the next discussion is to start with your testimony. And then from there, I see Janelle dissecting it to see where could you have made the change quicker? Why did you stay in? So I think your testimony would be a good base for when we return sometime in November when I speak with Moeen. But indeed, a great testimony, Raquel. And I'm thankful for programs like these where you can speak like that and also to be an advocate. Because you can speak or you're not an advocate. You just thank God you come out and this is, you in your small corner and I in mine. When you can make it well known that, look here, this is when you need to move. I didn't see the red flags. Let me use this opportunity to thank Moeen Williams, Raquel Bailey, Janelle N. Robbins for being with us today, for being with Come and Relax with HeCoin. This topic cannot be spoken too much about. There is so much for us to cover. Thank you, ladies. And Raquel and Janelle, you now have joined Moeen as inducted members into the HeCoin family. Thank you, ladies, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Professor.
You're most welcome. For persons who wish to make a donation to Come and Relax with HeCoin and what's on for next week are in the queue. Stay tuned.
Come and Relax with HeCoin is a feature of Health Education and Counseling Institute HeCoin, the premier online educational institution in the Caribbean. For individuals, companies, and foundations that wish to donate or contribute to this program, which is primarily to provide solutions to the worldwide issues of the day, please call in or WhatsApp your donation. 1-876-223-7204 on Thursdays between 8:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. EST, or during work hours Monday through Friday 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. EST, or email president@hecoinglobal.com. Hecoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go. The United Nations UN Secretary General Special Representative on Violence Against Children visited Jamaica in October 2022 to call for enhanced protection of children's rights. While in Jamaica, she met with government officials, children, human rights institutions, and civil society on a 4-day visit to support and mobilize further action to protect children from violence. Come and relax with HeCoin, the voice of Health Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online training institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and the world, will examine the topic, the protection of our children against violence. Is the government of Jamaica playing a pivotal role in this area, or much more needs to be done? At the end of the day, we would want our children to be activists against violence rather than victims. Not true? Join our panel of industry experts who will make short presentations covering a wide range of issues on the topic. Arlene Harrison-Henry, attorney at law, former president of the Jamaican Bar Association, former public defender of Jamaica and defender of human rights. Stacia Brown, certified life coach, author, former guidance counselor in Jamaica, associate counseling psychologist and early childhood educator in the USA. Pastor Teddy Jones, certified life coach, author, licensed and ordained minister of the Missionary Church Association in Jamaica, former guidance counselor, and currently works widely with schools and youth across Kingston and St. Andrew. And Reverend Carwh Waldo, certified life coach, author, minister of religion, principal of the Don Robin Preparatory School in St. Andrew, and former principal of the Institute of Vocational and Professional Training IVPT in Spring Village, St. Catherine, where a program for at-risk youth was implemented. With host, marketing and media consultant, international chaplain, theologian, and professor of media studies for over 30 years, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica. The date to remember, Thursday, November 3, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in Jamaica and 8:30 p.m. in other parts of the world on several media platforms to include RCP Internet Radio and TV, UFDV Gospel, and all platforms of DCM Internet Radio and TV. HeCoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go. Wow, wow.
Let me thank the following stations for sharing their platforms and for making this program always available to you. RCP Internet Radio and TV, YouTube and Facebook, UFDV Gospel, DCM Radio and TV on all its platforms. We are still in Jamaica 60 and will leave with you a short play on Jamaican relationship arguments, comedy sketch. I hope you will find it hilarious. Please watch it. A thought for you this week. Trauma may happen to you, but it will not, I beg your pardon. Trauma may happen to you, but it will never define you, by Melinda Longtail. Join us this and every Thursday at this time on this station for Come and Relax with HeCoin, sponsored by HeCoin. While daylight saving time may not apply to you, please remember the changes occur next week, Sunday. I'm Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett, the proud president and CEO, and in the second generation of leadership of this 33-year-old flagship training institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean and beyond, Health Education and Counseling Institute. Please receive the benediction. May the strength of God sustain you. May the power of God preserve you. May the hands of God protect you. May the way of God direct you. May the love of God go with you this day, now, and forevermore. Amen and amen. Walk with my friend.
I'm that nigga from Chabasti.
Anjo! Anjo! Dinner ready. Dinner ready. Unsteady. Unsteady. Hey! Expensive dish I get tonight, my baby. Wifey have the kitchen. Hold up! We'll leave me a cook and voila.
What up?
Lasagna. I said lasagna. Lasagna. Expensive dish this. I want to put in there pepper, cheese, beer cheese, not cheese. You see how cheesy and breezy. Oh, it smells. Smell good. Smell good. A vegan something they use. Organic. Fresh. You have to taste it really bad. Your bad. You know, wicked bad. Taste the something now. You never say you did hungry.
Yeah.
I know you play with my food.
Why
Why you play with my food?
Huh?
You know, see the spinach I drop
Your
off.
phone are in there?
Oh, it's just freaking Tasha. Baby, you know, say that girl can cook. That girl can. A long time I tell you now. Give me this. You know you can make peace, no worry. But no, you didn't love it.
Them no want see me able, so me know say I can't them. Me I say trend pon them. Them a start and me gone left them. Me girl they never real to me. Me try give the world, girl they never real to me.
Her die, she's always by my side. All if the case to try, she a sacrifice 'cause she not deny.